The Tao of Self-Confidence, Episode 934. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits. If you're tired of being the best-kept secret in your industry, listen up. You don't need to be louder, you need to be seen. Grab my free Visible Framework Toolkit, the exact steps I use to go from overlooked to being the go-to expert people turn to for impact and insight. Download it now at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Well, hello, friend. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap Chan, and today I have a phenomenal woman on the show today. She is an award-winning entrepreneur, speaker, and the founder of Rise. Super excited to have her on today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Theresa Corazon. Theresa, how are you today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to the listeners.
Hi, everyone. Sheena, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm really excited to share more about my journey and my story. A little bit more about me. Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years. Originally, I worked in television for 10 years, and then I created my first business, which was Socialite Conference, and that stood for Leader Impacting Global Humanity. Today was spelled light. My events were about 1,000 people per event with different guests like Richard Branson, Seth Godin, and more. And then I also produced a movie based on Hal Arad's book Miracle Morning, which sold over 4 million copies worldwide. And then I had a life-changing event where I survived a life-threatening bus accident on Easter Sunday, and I was found crushed under a bus in a pool of blood. And then they found my faint heartbeat, rushed me to St. Michael's Hospital, and today I'm alive. And that's sort of the catalyst of my rise blueprint and work and message and story. And yeah, I'm really grateful to be alive and here to share whatever value and knowledge that I can on my journey to self-confidence.
Thank you so much. And I totally forgot about that part where, that accident, which was like horrific. And I know you had to go through a lot. And I'm just glad you're here today. I just wanted to say that because I know it takes a lot to just get your self back up and be able to rise from it. And I just wanted to mention that before we go to the next question. But Teresa, what's your cultural background?
So I was born and raised in Toronto, and my parents are from the Philippines. And in my bloodline is also Spanish, Chinese, and French. So I consider myself Canadian Filipino.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And it's always great to have somebody on that's from Toronto. Actually, Teresa and I met at an event in Toronto last summer, and so I'm just really happy to have her on today on the show. So, Teresa, what'd be your favorite self-confidence quote?
My favorite self-confidence quote is with God, all things are possible by Matthew 19:26 in the Bible. And the reason that that's my, self-confidence quote is the verse anchors me. It reminds me that true confidence doesn't come from the ego or perfection, but rather from trust. And trust that I am guided, supported, and never alone. And I think it also reminds me that I believe that all of us are here with a purpose and a story and a mission that is signature to our heart and our lives. And the more we can do the work to discover what that message or story is, and the more we have courage to take actions toward it, that begins to build like our confidence. And so this quote grounds me in what for me is the foundational pillar of my confidence, which is my belief and love of God and knowing that I am a child of God and on a mission given to me by God.
Thanks for sharing that great quote. And in your own words, how do you define self-confidence?
So, self-confidence for me is self-trust. It's the quiet knowing that I am enough, I am worthy, I am capable, And even when things feel uncertain, it's not about having all the answers, but about having, again, the courage to take this next step while sort of like staying aligned with my values, my heart, and my faith. For me, self-confidence is about action, to be honest, and action and the learning that comes from the actions that we take, right? And whether we fall or we succeed, it's about loving ourselves through that process and then be willing to try again and be willing to be like, you know what? I learned something. Like there's a saying in entrepreneurship, like when you have a bad day or like when they say entrepreneurs don't lose. Like we either win or we learn. And when you have a bad day, rather than saying it's a bad day, you're saying, today I actually learned a lot. I learned a lot. And I think that self-confidence is again that knowingness of like who you are, what your purpose is, and that you are genuinely doing the best that you can in every action, thought, and beingness that you are.
Thanks for sharing that great definition. And I love how you mentioned self-trust and action, especially as women, even Asian women, we've never been taught to do that, right? We've never been taught to trust ourselves. We had every decision made for us. We don't follow our intuition when really women are very intuitive. We're afraid to take action. And, most women have low self-confidence due to inaction. And I know because I'm a prime example of that. I've been through that so many times. Nobody realizes sometimes I procrastinate like there's no tomorrow, but action is what gets results, right? And it doesn't have to be the perfect action. In my book Bridging the Confidence Gap, I talk about the process of ready, fire, aim. Start before you're ready, take action, and course correct because that's how we get results. We don't get results by saying ready, aim, fire because we just are trying to aim and then nothing happens, right? It's ready, fire, aim. You keep doing it until you get to the end result, and you'd be surprised what you accomplish. So I love that definition that you mentioned. And Teresa, what was your life like before your discovery of self-confidence?
So before like discovering self-confidence, I lived much of my life seeking external validation. I was like an ultimate people pleaser. I overwork, I overgave, and I pushed myself to prove my worth. I said yes when I really meant no. On the outside, things looked really successful, but internally, I struggled with self-doubt, overwhelm, the pressure to be strong all the time, look good all the time. Yeah, and I just was a serial people pleaser. And I think I didn't fully understand back then my self-worth, that it's okay to be messy and that it's okay to not have it all figured out and just be trying. And so that was me before I found my self-confidence.
Thanks for being so vulnerable. We're not taught to talk about our feelings, what we go through, even talking about, as a huge people pleaser or just staying strong. Or we've always been taught to be strong, to show your strength when really, that doesn't serve us. And our biggest strength is actually our vulnerability, sharing what we go through, sharing the good, bad, and the ugly. And that's how we can relate to others. And that pressure is high, right? And especially in Asian culture, for a lot of Asian women in those cultures, they've been pressured to serve everybody and not serve themselves, to think about everybody else and forget the most important person ever, which is ourself. And it's so important to take care of ourselves because if not, then we can't also, perform at our best, be at our best, show up at our best. So I love that you mentioned this because I know this is something a lot of the listeners have gone through and sometimes are afraid to talk about it because we're not taught to talk about it. But what was that point in your life when you realized you were more than enough, especially being an entrepreneur, especially going through, the accident that you went through? What gave you that aha moment that made you realize I can do this, I can rise, I can be the woman that I am today?
Great question. And I think I have something to say about what you said earlier. And I just want to share a little bit about how confidence impacted my journey as an entrepreneur. And I think that, it starts from like every traditional, like most Asians, like I was going to be a doctor. I was going to be a pediatrician And I come from a family of lawyers and doctors and successful business people, and it's in my lineage. And so I grew up thinking I was going to be a pediatrician, and I got accepted to med school, everything. And I did a speech for the Lieutenant Governor of Canada at 17. I won a national speaking contest for the chief of police. And I'm like the only 17-year-old that is invited to this dinner. And I was speaking about the importance of the community on the leadership of young people like myself. And when I did my speech that I wrote, I got a standing ovation that night. And the feeling I had was like, wow, like I got that reception for just being myself, you know. And I went home and I thought about it and I told my mother and my parents that I'm not going to become a doctor. I'm not going to go to med school because I started asking questions like, if money wasn't an issue, if like I didn't matter what my parents wanted, if all this stuff, like what do I actually love? And at 17, I love fashion, beauty, talking to really cool people and content. So I was like, I'm going to become a TV producer and like, or a TV on-air host. And I remember my mother being like, okay, you're going to go to the top school for that, which was Ryerson University at the time. An English teacher, my English, I had like 70 in English or something. And this is like 1,000 people apply and 100 people, 28 get in. And my teacher, I remember my English teacher at the time was like, Teresa, that's the most prestigious school. Like, you are not, good luck basically like getting in. And, you know, you're not like, your odds are no. And I remember going home that night and crying and being like, that's it. My destiny is not like that's it, you know? And I remember getting a call from the university. Actually, I called the university and they told me that I got accepted. And I remember bawling my eyes out and writing a letter to my that teacher and being like, "Dear Mr. Dreams do come true," with my acceptance letter to it. And it taught me that people are going to tell you what they think you're capable of. And I think you have to understand and have the courageous tenacity to still take the actions towards the things that you really want. And even when I was working in television, I was often the only Asian person, woman especially, in many corporate rooms, you know, who are making the decisions. And I often felt like I had to work harder, prove myself more, and just, you know, have this quiet knowingness and let my work speak for itself. And even when I launched Socialite, which grew to be one of the largest entrepreneur conferences in Canada nationally, people were like, you can't launch 1,000-person event in in like the largest city in Canada. And I went from sticky note idea to 4 months later launching. And my first event was at the Metro Toronto Convention Center with 1,000 people and Richard Branson. And so there was something deep inside my heart that cultivated a deep knowing. And I allude that to books like Think and Grow Rich and, you know, Tony Robbins, who shaped my life as a teenager. But it was genuinely this inner like knowingness and sort of like being the underdog. Like I like that people were saying, you can't do this. This is not possible. Da, da, da. And then still being bold enough to even think that that's even a possibility, you know, like, and I think for all the listeners listening out there, that dream that you have inside your heart, that thing that you know is your destiny and your calling in this world, having confidence is knowing that not only do you have what it takes to make that dream come true, but that every time that you fall down and every time you get a no, there is the possibility to say, I'm going to get up again tomorrow and try again. And I'm going to keep taking one baby step at a time. And whatever thing that happened to me happened for a reason. And now that leads to my aha moment. And so my aha moment, my aha moment came through adversity. After surviving a life-threatening accident, I was forced to slow down. I was hit by the bus and my life was saved on Easter Sunday. To give context, I had 8 broken ribs, frontal lobe brain trauma. My like hand was going to be amputated. They literally found like me in a pool of blood, crushed underneath the bus. They had to lift the bus. They brought the body bag, and they found my faint heartbeat. And when I realized and was told in the hospital what had happened to me, my total healing journey, which still continues to the day, has been 8 years. The first 3 years of getting back up after my miracle accident, the only goal I had was to get to the bathroom. And I was so humbled, like we get knocked down in life, but when you get everything stripped from you, including the ability to walk, the ability to talk, the ability to breathe, you just come to this place of such appreciation for life. And yeah, I was stripped of every single thing. And that's why, when I talk about rise, it really was the ability to turn adversity, recognize that adversity was actually a treasure trail to your heart's gold. See, every single person, in my opinion, is going to get hit by their version of a bus, whether it be a financial loss, a health diagnosis, a divorce, something might happen. And when you get hit by your version of a bus, how are you going to get back up? And so I created Rise to teach exactly how I got up. And I had to learn the fundamental importance of routine, which, I obviously learned when I produced The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. So the science and the importance of habits. I had to learn how to create systems around me for not only to heal, but to get back my mindset, right? I had to learn mindset, heart set, habits, so many things, and really how to win the inner game. And I fundamentally believe that once you win the inner game, watch what happens. And the four pillars of Rise is R is for routine, I is for impact one heart, and the power of the heart and the frequency of the heart. And then S is spiritual consciousness and whatever that might be. For me, it's God and Jesus, but life with spiritual consciousness. And E is to enjoy life. And it's this idea that that would have been game done for me. And you never know when your last moment, breath, or day is. So, whatever love that you can be, do, or express, to love now. And so, really, I realized that my life was spared for a reason and not to live small or safe, but to live more fully, more truthfully, and more courageously. And so, the moment that taught me that confidence isn't, that moment taught me that confidence isn't about control. It's about surrender, faith, and choosing to rise again.
First off, I just want to say we're so grateful that you're still here, still making an impact after what happened to you. For some people, it would have been game over, right? But you had the mindset, the inner work to rise, right? And you're right. The inner work, the inner strength, that is the most important inner confidence because without that, we're not going to go out there and take action. We're not going to go out there. Like you wouldn't have been able to even tell yourself, I just need to go to the bathroom. That's all I needed, just to go to the bathroom. And once you were able to make it, you're like, what can I do next? And what can I do next? And then here you are today. Like no one could even tell that you went through that horrific accident. When I first met you and you said that, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is wild. I never would have thought that. So just really grateful you're still here sharing your story. And because of that, what's your life been like now?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I used to be the kind of entrepreneur. And first, I just want to acknowledge you too, for being here, for the movement that you're creating, for the example that you are. So it's really cool to be in this conversation with you too, and to see you as you rise and continue to rise. So I just wanted to acknowledge you as well, because it's really amazing to see other Filipino and Asian women own their message, have the courage to be out there, write their book, get on stages. You know what I mean? That's not common. So thank you again. And I just want to highlight that and say how awesome it is for me to also be in conversation with somebody like yourself as well. So yeah, so after that, I used to be 0 to 100 kind of person. Like I was like, like all I knew was work, go to bed, wake up, work, go to bed, and 0 to 100. And I think after my miracle accident had happened, I became 0 to 1 and then 1 to 2. And I have incorporated that in my life, my current goals, my business, the women and people that I touch, and my message today. It's 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3. and so forth, you know? And so after discovering self-confidence, everything changed. I did EMDR trauma therapy to heal all my past childhood traumas. Obviously, getting hit by a bus and surviving was a massive trauma I had to deal with, but I took a year off, specifically off social media, off everything. I went completely MIA. You know, I was already MIA. I was in the hospital for 8 months, spending Christmas, Easter, and my birthday in a hospital. And that was isolation in itself. But then I did one as a chosen isolation to do the deep inner healing work. And I think that process with professionals allowed me to, like they say in EMDR trauma therapy, that we all have these open books. So, like, got bullied when I was little, did a business partner took 6 figures out of my calendar, I got hit by all these different things. And we walk around with all these open books of past traumas. And when you take the time to actually heal those traumas with a professional, in my recommendation, you would then begin to close those books and put them on the bookshelf. And they're always part of your story, but they're closed chapters now, right? And then that allows of completedness, of soul freedom and lightness. And I think that throughout that process, I began to say no. And when I began to say no to things that I would normally say yes to, it opened up a world of self-confidence I had never known because I was done with people pleasing and saying yes when I meant no and really valuing my life and my breath and my time. Who I surrounded myself with was completely like 180'd. I took a real good assessment around, you know, what energies I allowed in myself, around myself. I believe that we have three mouths, our eyes, our ears, and our mouth. So what are you feeding your eyes, right? What are you listening to? What are you watching? You know, and obviously what are you feeding yourself on many different levels? And once I understood and got a deeper sense of love for myself, for all my past, for everything that is the person that I am with all of that, and I came complete with all of that, it allowed me again to have a level of self-love, which then led to self-confidence. And I began to make decisions from alignment instead of fear. I learned how to set boundaries, honor my energy, and say yes to things that truly light me up. I now live with more intention, gratitude, and purpose. And I lead from my heart, trusting God's timing and embracing who I am without apology. So yeah, and it's a learning curve, and I think it's a constant learning curve, but it's a delicious one, which is why I now really fundamentally believe in doing the inner work.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love everything that you mentioned. And I know setting boundaries is probably the hardest thing an Asian person can do, especially when we're taught to say yes to everything. So I love that you said that. I know we all have that people pleasing mode, even myself included. I mean, I recently had to put a boundary too and realize, putting that boundary is actually helping someone instead of hindering them. So I love that you mentioned that. And if our listeners were, in a similar situation listening to your episode, and wanted some advice, what would be that one tip you would give to them?
I would say be gentle with yourself. Like your journey doesn't have to look like anyone else's. Create space to listen to your heart and your intuition and build simple daily routines and systems like the Miracle Morning, like the things that I teach in my Rise program that nourish your mind, body, and spirit. This includes meditation, breath work, journaling, prayer, all the things that fill you up. And I think when you do that work and that inner work, you will naturally begin to be more confident, you know, and more importantly, I think it's important for you to know that you're not behind. Every step you take inward is also a step towards your power. And confidence comes with action, aligned action, and the courage to take just one baby step at a time. Lastly, I think I remember like my word of last year was to release and receive. And I think when you think of the infinity sign, okay, the infinity sign goes like this. We're very oftentimes we're very good at this side, which is the giving. Give, 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 which is one side of the infinity. But I think that in order to be at your most sort of aligned self, it requires the other side, which is the receiving side. And so a more balanced way is to, when you're giving, to also receive, and like the importance of that in your life. Because oftentimes I find that with people pleasers, especially, we tend to give a lot, And I think when you strengthen this side of the things to also receive and believe that you're worthy to receive abundance, to receive all the things that are in your destiny to receive, you open up a channel of a much more beautiful flow state aligned life. And when you have your heart and love and God at the center of that, it's an extraordinary life to live.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that great tip. And if our listeners wanted to get to know a little bit more about you and what you do, check out your Rise program. Is there any links or social media profiles we can connect with?
To learn more about my Rise program, watch the Miracle Morning movie that I produced, or connect with me about speaking or coaching, definitely you can visit theresacorazon.com. You can also check out my Instagram and connect with me there at my Theresa Corazon, or on LinkedIn as well.
Thanks so much, Theresa. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Theresa, you can also head on to thetaoofselfconfidence.com and search for Theresa's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else that we talked about. And I just really want to thank Theresa for taking the time to share her story and wisdom on confidence. So thank you so much, Theresa, for being here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. And to everybody listening, just know that deep inside of you is a seed of possibility. And you have a story, a message that is divinely assigned to you. And I encourage you today to take just one step towards that goal or that dream with a deep inner knowing that you can, and that dream is possible.
Thank you so much for that last note. And to our listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. You can now purchase Bridging the Confidence Gap: How Empowered Women Change the World on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Indigo, and other book retailers sold worldwide. Get your copy today. Thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of The Tao of Self-Confidence. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to get your daily boost of confidence.